Hello, and welcome to Star Wars Stories Extended. This episode explores various narratives surrounding the rebellion, highlighting the diverse individuals who played significant roles in it. The Rebellion Era, sometimes referred to as the Classic Era, takes place between 0 BBY, which is the Battle of Toprawa, and 4 ABY, the Battle of Endor, and into events after the battle until 5 ABY. The events of the original trilogy, A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi take place during this era. Let's start at 0 BBY with an event called Interlude at Darknell. Senator Garm Bel Iblis, who is believed to have died along with his family at the hands of an Imperial assassin, and Corsec Inspector Hal Horn are pitted against one of the Empire's most dangerous agents, namely Yasan Isard. Miranda Savage, hiding from Inspector Horn, acquires a pack of data cards that include sensitive Imperial information. Isard, with her cohorts, seeks to retrieve the data cards at the behest of Armand Isard. According to the Essential Reader's Companion, the events of Interlude at Darknell take place in about 0 BBY. However, this contradicts events described in Star Wars The Force Unleashed, in which Garm Bel Iblis is taken to the Death Star by Darth Vader in around 2 BBY, and therefore should have been aware of its existence in 0 BBY. A few months before the Battle of Yavin, Rihanna Saren, a Twi'lek, started her life of freedom as a mercenary. Rihanna had an arrogant streak due to her painful past as a slave. Rihanna lost a Leku after Saren Keeve, the Zabrak slaver who owned her, got angry at her for trying to escape and had her Leku cut off. Rihanna eventually had a prosthetic replacement fitted. Rihanna started off her mercenary career in Coruscant, but she often had to flee from Imperial scout groups. She eventually was contacted by Kyle Katarn, who asked her to steal an Imperial shipment of Mercanite from a Black Sun warehouse. She decided to do it for a price. She infiltrated the innermost area of the warehouse, killed many Black Sun guards, but was captured and accidentally activated Zio. Zio freed her from her cell, and they attained possession of the Imperial shipment and brought it to the rebellion. Leia Organa was very grateful and asked Rihanna if she would go to Alderaan. Rihanna agreed and successfully shut down an Imperial drug chain. On Alderaan, she confronted and killed Slak Sagar, then took his heavy blaster. While on Alderaan, she learned from Princess Leia that shipments of the drug were on Mustafar, where it was being used to increase a slave production of Mercanite. Rihanna set out to stop production at the factory. She infiltrated the factory and found some Wookiee slaves. The leader of the group said where the drill was in the factory. She deactivated the drill shaft and set off explosives to destroy the entire facility. She then came across Keeve and followed him to Tatooine, where her ship was shot down by Boba Fett in the Slave One. While on Tatooine, she located and killed the Twi'lek slaver Cedrus after finding out where Keeve was located, and then took his blaster rifle. He was in another part of the town, and when she found him in an arena, he let a Rancor loose. Rihanna Saren and Zio killed the Rancor. Keeve then captured her and took her to Despire, where she found out about the Death Star. Rihanna escaped the prison on Despire and managed to make her way onto the Death Star before Despire's destruction. Upon arrival on the Death Star, she headed to the communication center and told the rebels about the battle station. She then stole an Imperial ship and headed to Danuta, where the plans of the Death Star were being held by Keeve. Rihanna fought her way to Keeve and killed him in his personal battle armor, though not before Keeve was able to take a pot shot at Rihanna. Zio sacrificially took the shot and was seriously damaged. Rihanna took the Death Star plans from Keeve's body. Rihanna, holding Zio, walked to her transport ready to continue her mercenary work. After Rihanna Saren informed the rebellion about the destruction of Despire and the plans of the Death Star being held on Danuta, it was decided to steal those schematics in order to find a weakness to the new Imperial weapon. Rebel leadership decided that sending a team of commandos to fulfill the mission would risk too much collateral damage to the city of Trid, so they instead hired Saren and Kyle Katarn to infiltrate the facility and steal the plans. Kyle Katarn, a former Imperial-turned-Rebel agent, infiltrated an Imperial complex with the assistance of Mek Odom, an Imperial officer and longtime friend who gave Katarn information on when to pass through the South Perimeter Gate, how to enter through an air shaft, and what kind of security to expect inside the facility. Odom was further able to override the South Perimeter Gate's collateral security systems, which were his duty to watch. Simultaneously, Jan Orr secured an escape route with the Moldy Crow, by destroying the Imperial TIE fighters at Trid's spaceport. All but one were destroyed on the ground, guaranteed that no fighters would pursue them. Ors then staged a diversion at the Trid facility by detonating a small bomb near the north perimeter. 45 minutes after Katarn was to enter the base, and then flying by in the Crow 15 minutes later to fire upon any personnel who were sent to investigate. It was during this run that she destroyed the base's ATST and killed Major Horst, the facility's officer of the day who had decided to investigate the perimeter disturbance personally. During this diversion, Katarn cut through the station's reduced defenses. Despite his skills and adrenaline, Katarn was on a few occasions saved by luck, and in the most intense moments of fighting, he found himself beginning to draw on the Force to sense things before seeing them, a reliance he did not yet fully understand. However, despite lower resistance, the facility was still heavily fortified with various security systems. To this end, Katarn needed a red banded key to access a lift leading to a security room. The security room contained a control panel which opened the staircase leading into the control room. Aiming to preserve his accomplice's anonymity, Katarn wounded Odom with a careful shot that incapacitated without killing him. After retrieving the memory matrix, Katarn then met Ors and the Moldy Crow at the rendezvous point on the roof, escaping with the plans that ensured the obtainment of a complete layout of the Death Star. Bora Naal was a prominent human male historian in the service of the Alliance to restore the Republic and its various successor governments. He began his career as a reporter for the Galactic News Service. His experiences and imprisonment during the Imperial overthrow of the government of Coruscant drove him into the arms of the Alliance. Within a few years of joining the rebellion, Naal had earned the rank of lieutenant. He was at Massassi Outpost on Yavin 4 following the Alliance's victory over the Empire's Death Star battle station at the Battle of Yavin. After the battle, he participated in the ceremony awarding the Medal of Bravery to Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. Naal was responsible for bearing one of the medals, which General Jan Dodonna handed to Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, who awarded it to Luke Skywalker. He became a historian under Master Historian Arhul Hextrophon, tasked with compiling the histories of the heroes of Yavin. Naal traveled to Tatooine and Galvani 3 to acquire information and context on the events preceding the battle, and conducted interviews with the participants, submitting the information in a report to Hextrophon. Subsequent reports included an attempt to discover the truth behind Han Solo and Chewbacca's adventures on Aduba 3, a 168,000 DSU report on the Rebel Alliance for Mon Mothma, an account of the events surrounding the Battle of Hoth and the tribulations of the heroes of Yavin afterward, a piece on the Battle of Turok 4, and a report on the Battle of Endor. With the dawn of the New Republic, Naal's historical works led him to continued advancement. He became the director of New Republic Council Research and assistant historian to the Republic, and he created reports on Grand Admiral Thrawn's and the Resurrected Palpatine's campaigns, as well as of Han Solo's experiences in the corporate sector years before. He also compiled the oral history of the New Republic and later edited and annotated 10 years after notes on the mature organizational and administrative structure of the New Republic, an article by the chief historian of the Kelmer Institute. Naal retired as head of New Republic Council Research, becoming a history professor and marrying former deep cover spy Rivash Tarkin, with whom he had several children. After the Yu-Uzan-Vong War, he became Archivist Emeritus of the Historical Council of the Galactic Federation of Free Alliances, in which capacity he supervised the release of the second edition of an important historical chronicle. After the Battle of Yavin, Kyle Katarn is contacted by Mon Mothma to investigate an Imperial assault on the TAC base of Talay, using a type of Imperial trooper never encountered previously. After the attack on TAC base, Kyle infiltrates the ruins of the base and discovers a prototype Dark Trooper weapon. The initials MR are discovered on it, which are found to stand for Moff Rebus, an infamous Imperial weapons engineer. This investigation reveals the Dark Trooper project led by General Rum Mok, and this leads Katarn to Anowat, where he finds Moff hiding in the sewage system of Anowat City. During interrogation, Moff Rebus reveals the location of a testing facility for the mineral Frick, used in the construction of Dark Troopers on the planet Fest. After obtaining a sample of this mineral, Kyle is led to the Groma system, where Frick is mined and the Phase 1 Dark Troopers are manufactured. After the destruction of this facility, Krix Maydeen is found to have been captured by the Empire and sent to an Imperial detention center on Oranakra. Once Kyle has rescued Maydeen, he provides Kyle with critical information regarding the Dark Trooper project. Kyle travels to the Ramses Head docking port on Cal Seti, which is used for Imperial runs to the frozen planet of Antivi, where the second phase of Dark Trooper's construction was completed. After smuggling himself aboard an Imperial ship, Kyle reaches Antivi and destroys the I-Station Beta facility. He is afterwards led to Nar Shaddaa, where he obtains a Navicard. At this point in the scenario, the Empire has placed a large bounty on his head, and as he pulls out of Nar Shaddaa, the Moldy Crow is captured by Jabba the Hutt in the Star Jewel. Here, Kyle is stripped of his weapons and has to fight hand-to-hand with a Kell Dragon. After obtaining his weapons, he and Jan Orris escape to Coruscant, the only place where Kyle can insert the Navicard into a decoder to reveal data chips used for additional information. On his way to his ship, Kyle finds the Crow missing and Boba Fett waiting for him. He defeats Fett after a hard fight and then travels to the Imperial fuel station Ergo, where he sneaks into the Executor. From here, he smuggles himself aboard the Arkhammer, where the third and final phase of the Dark Troopers is being overseen. Finally, Kyle faces Ram Mak, spearhead of the operation, and defeats him. Kyle proceeds to blow up the Arkhammer and escapes. Watching from the Executor, Darth Vader comments that this is an unfortunate setback and somewhat prophetically notes that the Force is strong with Katarn. For his actions and bravery in the face of defeat, Mon Mothma awards Kyle the Star of Alderaan. The rebellion against the Galactic Empire began as a peaceful movement by a political minority, known as the Delegation of 2000, within the Galactic Senate. Certain senators, such as Padme Amidala of Naboo, Bail Organa of Alderaan, and Mon Mothma of Chandrila, grew increasingly concerned over the constitutional amendments that weakened the legislature and empowered the executive branch with near dictatorial authority. Although a majority of the Senate supported such alterations to the government's overall structure because of the Separatist crisis and subsequent Clone Wars, both of which threatened to divide the galaxy in half between the Galactic Republic and the Separatist insurrection, the members of the Delegation of 2000 felt that the amendments were too radical, unconstitutional, and generally detrimental to the future of the Republic. Despite the fact that the Separatists were on the verge of defeat in 19 BBY, the final year of the Clone Wars, most senators continued to invest even greater authority within Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Fearing that the Republic would inevitably drift into an authoritarian regime, the Delegation of 2000 formally presented their concerns to the Chancellor with a request for the relinquishing of his emergency powers. Unknown to the Delegation of 2000, however, Chancellor Palpatine was secretly a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious. For 1,000 years, the Order of the Sith Lords waited and plotted for the time when they would reassert their dominance over the galaxy, specifically by overthrowing the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Order. As Palpatine, Sidious spent decades infiltrating the political hierarchy of the Republic. His election as Chancellor, the creation of the Kamino Clone Army, the escalation of the Separatist movement, and the outbreak of the Clone Wars were all factors in the Sith plot to seize control of the galaxy. 3 years of galactic warfare strengthened Chancellor Palpatine's position as a public figure. Public support for his leadership in the Clone Wars remained strong throughout the conflict. He was immensely popular with the Republic citizenry, and the Senate majority remained firmly committed to its leader in regard to his policy-making decisions. Yet the systematic suppression of thousands of years of Republic traditions and democratic ideals convinced Amidala, Organa, and a group of like-minded senators that the Republic was in danger of losing its core principles for the sake of security. The passing of the Sector Governance Decree all but made the Senate obsolete. Entire sectors would be controlled by a cabal of military governors, otherwise known as Moffs, handpicked by Chancellor Palpatine. Jan Dodonna was born on Kamino. He began his military career in the judicial forces, serving as a lieutenant in the crew of the cruiser Ardent IV during the Stark Hyperspace War. Dodonna held the rank of captain by the time of the Clone Wars and first rose to prominence during the conflict, becoming one of the finest Star Destroyer captains in the Republic Navy. Dodonna commanded the 2 task forces that comprised the Victory Fleet. Dodonna was awarded the Holt Cross on Anaxis 3 weeks after the battle he had fought there. Dodonna's grasp of strategy was particularly keen, as he revolutionized the tactics of space combat. His expertise lay in logistics and siege tactics. He proposed a number of siege weapons, proposals later adopted by the Galactic Empire for their use in such operations as the Siege of Dalrun 5 and Project Asteroid. As the Republic became the Galactic Empire, Dodonna served loyally for a time. When the Psi Mithrian insurrection began in 19 BBY, Dodonna was given command of forces to suppress it. Dodonna's victories were celebrated in the core worlds, but his loyalty to the Empire gradually became tested as it resorted to ever more brutal acts of reprisal against purported sedition. Though he disliked what the imperial regime was becoming, Dodonna's loyalty as a soldier led him to refuse to speak ill of it. Furthermore, he regarded the fledgling rebel alliance as a foolish provocation that would only cause chaos and misery. Disillusioned and unhappy, Dodonna eventually retired from the service on ideological grounds. The Empire, in turn, gave the famous war hero Commonor's moon, Brelor, where he spent many years raising his son, Vrad. Dodonna refused Mon Mothma's many offers for him to join her fledgling resistance movement, an act he considered treasonous. The rebellion learned of an assassination order by Compnor and sent messengers to inform Dodonna. At first, he scoffed, but when the assassins arrived, he escaped on the rebels' ship. In space, the messenger's slow freighter was pursued by an Imperial ship. Dodonna suggested a course of action to General Sewell, but in the heat of the moment, Sewell froze, and Dodonna took the controls of the vessel, executing his tactic and destroying the opposing vessel. Because of this, Dodonna was immediately commissioned to General by Mon Mothma. The planets that held the base under his command include Chirelis, Phrygia, Orion 4, Dantooine, and Yavin 4. Years later, with plans brought to him by Princess Leia Organa, Dodonna helped plan the attack on the Death Star. Following the destruction of the Death Star, the Empire blockaded Yavin 4, while Darth Vader waited for the Super Star Destroyer Executor to be completed. When it was, Vader brought it to finish the rebels, but was stopped by a suicide strike delivered by Vrad, Dodonna's son. Heartbroken, Dodonna set up the Yavin base to explode, taking out a number of TIE fighters and buying more time for the evacuation. He was believed to be killed in the blast, but in reality he had been captured by Imperial forces. He was eventually sent to Lusanka. The Imperials were unable to turn him into a sleeper agent. Eventually, Rogue Squadron found the surviving Lusanka prisoners, and Dodonna was finally freed. Dodonna served on the New Republic Council, and years later eventually retired, settling on New Alderaan, where he peacefully passed away. Jack Tono Porkins was a trader and pilot from Bestine 4 who, along with the other Bestines, was forced to abandon his homeworld when the Galactic Empire chose it as the site of a new military base. Seeking the opportunity to strike back at the Empire, Porkins joined the Alliance to restore the Republic and was assigned to Tirfon Rebel Outpost for pilot training and with the Tirfon Yellow Aces. His skill at low-altitude strafing runs and his rotund physique earned him the nicknames Belly Runner and Piggy. After the completion of the Empire's Death Star, the Yellow Aces were taken to fully active status and transferred to fill gaps in pilot rosters at other rebel bases. When Porkins' good friend Wes Jansen was taken ill with a case of Heskin fever, Porkins was given his friend's assignment instead and transferred to Red Squadron, operating out of the Great Temple on Yavin 4. Porkins soon took part in his first missions with Wedge Squadron, working with Big Starklighter, Wedge Antilles, and Ceci Eris to help retrieve a number of astromech droids from the smuggler Nera Dantels on Commonor. The group returned to Yavin 4 just before the arrival of the Death Star in the Yavin system, on a mission to destroy the rebel base. Porkins flew as Red 6 during the Battle of Yavin, his skills at strafing aiding the rebels early in the battle. However, when his T-65 X-Wing starfighter was struck by debris, leaving him with several mechanical and computer malfunctions, Porkins was hit by enemy turbo laser fire and killed. As a heavy-set man, Porkins would set his inertial compensator to full while in flight. Wedge Antilles always considered this a possible factor in his death. Had his compensation been lower, he may have realized how low he was and been able to attempt to correct it before he was struck by enemy fire. Despite his unflattering nicknames, Porkins made many friends among those he served with and was seen as both brave and noble and was one of the most respected pilots in the Rebel Alliance. His good friend, Wes Jansen, often spoke highly of him, though Jansen struggled with the guilt he felt about his absence from Yavin, feeling that this had contributed to Porkins' death. Wedge Antilles also considered Porkins to be among the best pilots he had flown with and was deeply hurt by his death. A holographic memorial to Porkins, along with the other pilots killed during the mission, was installed in the Great Temple following the battle, and he was still included in the Rogue Squadron Memorial as late as 5 ABY. His actions during the Battle of Yavin saw him posthumously awarded the Kenobi Medallion, a medal created specifically to remember the sacrifices of those who fought at Yavin. His Kenobi Medallion was hung with those of his comrades in the pilot's lounge at Tirfon Rebel Base. Wedge Squadron survivors Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles later founded Rogue Squadron, and though Porkins died before Rogue Squadron's formation, Wedge always considered him and the other members of Red Squadron to be among the first Rogues. Rogue Squadron named one of their maneuvers Porkins Formation in his memory. After Wedge and Jansen formed Wraith Squadron, following the New Republic's capture of Coruscant, they informed the Gamorrean Wraith recruit Vort Sabrinring that they did not see his nickname of Piggy as an insult. Instead, it was a mark of respect, as the same nickname had once belonged to Porkins. Sometime before the Battle of Yavin, Vander served as Princess Leia's pilot for a rebel mission to the Belisar system. On their journey to the system, Vander told jokes to the princess, who would later remember him as a friend. Vander also participated in an attack on an Imperial supply outpost on Kashyyyk with Hol Okand as his wingman. Eventually, Vander would be transferred to the Alliance's Masasi base on Yavin 4. Vander and Gold Squadron, along with Blue, Green, and Red Squadron, departed from the rebel base to accompany Admiral Raddus in his support of Rogue One team in their attempt to steal the technical readouts of the planet-destroying Death Star battle station. Assisting in the space battle as Raddus's fleet attacked the Shield Gate orbital station, Vander and Gold Squadron conducted several attack runs on the Shield Gate, utilizing proton bombs in an effort to weaken the shield. After sustaining casualties, they were redirected by Raddus against the flotilla of Star Destroyers. Vander gave the order to take advantage of an opening in Imperial defenses, and he and 4 of his wingmates swooped into position to attack. The Gold Squadron pilots launched ion torpedoes at the Star Destroyer Persecutor, disabling it and allowing it to be rammed by the Lightmaker. Colliding with the Star Destroyer Intimidator as well as the Shield Gate, this disabled the deflector shield and allowed the plans on the ground to be successfully transmitted from the Citadel Tower to the Profundity, and eventually the Tantive 4. Vander survived the battle, and the actions of he and his squadron would prove beneficial in helping the Alliance to victory at Scarif, despite the high number of casualties. By 0 BBY, he was present for General Jan Dodana's briefing for the upcoming assault on the Death Star. During the briefing, Vander questioned the ability of the Alliance's snub fighters to destroy a target of the space station's size, and later gave Princess Leia a look of concern when Dodana mentioned that the exhaust port was only 2 meters wide. Despite his skepticism, Vander would fly his Y-Wing, now designated Gold 1, as Gold Leader, leading his squadron on one of the battle's first trench runs. John Dutch Vander was shot down and killed by Darth Vader. Biggs was born on Tatooine to the local agricultural magnate Huff Darklighter and his wife. He was raised a privileged child. As a teenager, Biggs spent much of his time in the town of Anchorhead, where he met young Luke Skywalker. A strong friendship quickly developed between the two. Together, along with their friends Tank, Fixer, Cammy, Deke, and Wendy Starkiller, they would often socialize at Tashi Station, a power distribution center just outside Anchorhead. The strong bond between Biggs and Luke was fueled by an intense undercurrent of competition that kept their lives charged. Together, they raced land speeders through the streets of Anchorhead and T-16 skyhoppers through Beggar's Canyon in the Junlin Waste, tagging womp rats. They constantly pushed one another to the limit, becoming expert pilots. Luke was a better shot in his T-16, but Biggs was the better pilot in his newer model. During one run through the canyon, Biggs threaded his way through a small opening in a 60-meter spindle of rock known as the Stone Needle, giving him near legendary status among the Anchorhead residents. Luke, of course, was soon forced to match the feat. As Biggs and Luke grew older, the two friends planned to attend the Imperial Academy together. They also planned on buying a starship after graduation and go into business together, though they did not have any specific plans as to what they would do. Biggs' father arranged for his son's commission into the Prevsbelt 4 Naval Academy. However, Luke's uncle, Owen Lars, kept his nephew behind on Tatooine for another season. A short time before Biggs departed, The Anchorhead gang had a celebration and race in Beggar's Canyon. The adventure ended in battle when a clan of Tusken raiders attacked. When Biggs was wounded by a raider's Gatterfy stick, Luke was forced to pilot him to safety through the treacherous Diablo Cut. Biggs was a skilled mechanic. He told Luke that a true pilot should know every last detail about his ship and how it works. So, just prior to leaving for the academy, he decided to build a T-16 from scratch with some small assistance from Luke. The finished product, as Biggs admitted, was a bit rough around the edges, but he was still proud of his work and insisted he could hold his own in his new craft against any pilot. Luke simply laughed at his face at the scrap heap. This angered Biggs to an extent to which Luke had never seen him before, and the older man challenged his friend to a race through the canyon. What Luke thought would be a simple test run turned out to be a heated race, with Biggs blasting out of the hangar without a word. His new T-16 began to shake and sway almost immediately. A lesser pilot would have been forced to slow down to maintain control. Biggs only increased his speed. The race only lasted for about 5 minutes before Luke finally caught up with him. Just as he was about to commend Biggs on his performance, pieces began to drop off the makeshift T-16, including the engine. The craft crashed to the ground, rolling end over end several times before coming to a stop. Luke raced to the downed craft to check on his friend, but Biggs was not in the pilot's seat. Fearing his friend had been fatally ejected from the craft, Luke was soon tackled from behind by a laughing Biggs. Luke never knew exactly how Biggs had managed to survive the crash. Garvin Drace was born on the planet Verujansi in the Inner Rim. Garvin spent much of his youth flying in the giant boar crawler caves and knew every inch of the area. During the pan-galactic conflict known as the Clone Wars, which broke out in 22 BBY and raged for 3 years, Garvin served with his homeworld's rarefied air cavalry. When Verujansi was occupied by the Confederacy of Independent Systems, the rarefied air cavalry fought alongside the Republic Navy to liberate the planet. Much of the air-based combat was fought in the Bone Crawler Caves, where Garvin, who had only just graduated from flying T-16 Skyhoppers to Z-95 Headhunters, was given the opportunity to fly alongside the heralded Hero with No Fear, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who was leading the Republic Air Forces in the battle. Garvin was considered to be the hottest pilot on Verujansi despite his youth, until Anakin arrived. On Anakin's first trip through the Boar Crawler Caves, Garvin had flown in the lead position and wondered if the Jedi would be able to keep up. After 2 minutes, Garvin's musings were answered when Anakin snap-rolled his Delta 7 and took over the lead. Garvin struggled to keep up, and his astonishment at Anakin's feat was acknowledged back at base by a smile from the Jedi. Thanks to the efforts of the rarefied air cavalry and the Republic, Verujansi was successfully liberated. In his later life, Garvin would hold Anakin in great esteem. With the rise of the Galactic Empire following the end of the Clone Wars, Garvin remained on Verujansi and was witness to several Imperial atrocities. His village was burned, and the fields of his family's farm were torched by the Empire. He watched TIE fighters destroy transports with only the bare minimum of reasons. Eventually, Garvin decided to take a stand against the Empire and join the Alliance, serving as a starfighter pilot. He served in numerous campaigns flying X-Wings, Y-Wings, and R-22s. At some point, he gained the nickname Dave. In his work, Garvin participated in the recruitment of new pilots for squadrons other than his own, such as Ryle Torsen of Gold Squadron. For a considerable amount of time, Ord Mantelian smuggler Theron Nett flew as Garvin's wingman. In addition to his use of the T-65, Garvin amassed over 1,000 hours of experience in the T-16 Skyhopper, which featured similar controls to the X-Wing. In 0 BBY, he was assigned to the Alliance base on the world of Dantooine, where he commanded Dantooine Squadron. On Dantooine, Garvin was joined by an old comrade, Davish Krail of Gold Squadron. The rebels were forced to abandon that base, however, when Torsen discovered a hidden Imperial tracking device, and as a result, they relocated to the Great Temple on Yavin 4. After their success against the Galactic Empire at Yavin 4, Alliance High Command sent many expedition teams across the galaxy to scout locations for a new base, realizing that Imperial retribution would come swiftly against their base on Yavin 4. A number of factors converged in making Hoth the primary choice. First, shortly before the evacuation of Yavin, 6 months after the destruction of the first Death Star, Luke Skywalker, while fleeing from an Imperial pursuit squadron, crash-landed on the icy world of Hoth. The planet was currently the refuge for a family of fugitives from the Empire. Its remote location, protective asteroid belt, and low likelihood of Imperial presence made it an ideal candidate for the new Alliance headquarters. Luke recommended the world to Alliance High Command. After further recommendation by their Habasa allies, the High Command began to consider Hoth as a suitable location for its next important base. High Command dispatched a commando team to gather further information on potential bases, and 8 months after the Battle of Yavin, Leia, Luke, and Han infiltrated an Imperial data station to compile a list of planets that met the desired criteria. Worlds that were currently uninhabited, but that contained existing facilities such as abandoned mining complexes. Soon after, Aaron Kraken's mission to Pole Major resulted in the Alliance acquiring a wealth of cold weather material, shield generator equipment, and a dozen combat-modified airspeeders. However, the distinctiveness of this equipment allowed Senior Captain Thrawn to identify the Rebel base's planetary characteristics, enabling Darth Vader to narrow down the possible locations for his search, and thus, in conjunction with General Veer's discovery that the base was located somewhere near the El Route system, greatly accelerated his discovery of Echo Base. To better examine the planet, the Alliance Special Forces had established a small outpost there, evaluating the potential of building a larger base. Even though the outpost came under attack by a small Imperial force, the Spec Force successfully defended it, and no Imperials remained alive to report about it. After escaping simultaneous attacks by the bounty hunter Raskar and the smuggler Salmak, Major Kim Monon, head of the Alliance Corps of Engineers, was sold the location of a series of caves by an old smuggler. Monon was then dispatched to Hoth to plan and oversee the construction of what would become Echo Base. Geothermal analysis indicated that the best location for the base was on the northern edge of the only livable temperate band near the equator. Monon's engineers built the base under the mountains of the Claburn Range, south of the Nev ice flow, and reinforced the natural ice caverns beneath the surface of Hoth to serve as pathways using LC-10BWs. After 2 standard years, Echo Base was completed. 2 large bay doors provided main entrances at the north and south ends of the mountain range. The hangar was one of the first segments built to allow for the steady inflow of resources. The facility included perimeter defense trenches, static anti-infantry, vehicle emplacements, a V-150 Planet Defender ion cannon, an Orc-19 planetary comscan unit, a planetary shield, a medical facility, and a command center. At its height, the base housed 7,500 combat and command personnel, 350 medical personnel, and 120 droids. The hangar was large enough to simultaneously house at least 30 GR-75 medium transports, 60 Rebel starfighters, 12 snowspeeders, the Millennium Falcon, and the Outrider. At one location inside the base, several bridges were over a deep chasm. The medical lab consisted of several rooms and featured at least 2 medical droids, 2-1B and FX-7, as well as a Bacta tank. The Alliance patrolled the terrain surrounding Echo Base with mounted Tauntaun riders and snowspeeders and regularly warded off Wampa attacks. The perimeter of the base was dotted with scout posts labeled Echo Stations such as Echo Station 3-8, Echo Station 3T8, and Echo Station 5-7. The ion cannon control bunker was connected to its own hangar. The outside of the base was protected by a Rebel Alliance fortress and other military buildings, and a defense bunker was connected to the base. The ion cannon was protected by trenches and anti-material laser cannons, and a tunnel connected the control bunker to Echo Base. Dak Ralter was born to political prisoners in the Imperial Labor Colony on Callist 6. His parents were children of the Galactic Republic, who greatly valued the peace and prosperity of those days. Born into captivity, Dak instead only knew the galaxy as a place of fear, oppression, and the Empire. As a youth, his parents would often model his dreams with tales of the wonder and delight that existed before the formation of the Empire. These stories were about all that kept him going during his days living inside the huge, transparent steel dome of Callist 6. His parents' stories helped him keep alive a spark of hope inside the young Dak. He knew that someday his hopes would come to fruition, as they did when he was 17 standard years old. A new prisoner named Bragg came to the camp one day, and being just a bit older than Dak, the two became fast friends. Bragg was a rebel pilot who was downed while on a reconnaissance mission. Luckily for Bragg, the Empire did not know of his affiliation, or he likely would have faced an interrogation droid or worse. Zeb Zev Seneska was born and raised on Kestic Station, a trading outpost on the fringes of the Bestine system, a stopover point for free traders with no affiliations, especially ties to the Galactic Empire. Zev became familiar and skilled in the life of a trader and pilot. His parents were persons of high ideals. They were known for trading in virtually any kind of good and in their later years began running arms for the fledgling Rebel Alliance. Although supplying the rebellion was illegal and punishable by death, they felt they were doing the right thing and sought to instill the same kind of morality in their son. Growing up in such a free environment and surrounded by people with such strong ethical values, Zev was a perfect candidate for recruitment by the rebellion. His parents encouraged him to leave Kestic and take up arms with the rebellion, which he soon did. Under his parents, Kestic soon became a vital link in the Alliance's supply chain. However, Rebel supply lines were traced back to the station. The Star Destroyer Merciless, on a tip from an informant, arrived and, without stopping to take prisoners or ask questions, destroyed the station. All aboard were killed, including Zev's parents. His response to this strategy was not grief, but anger. He blamed the Alliance for the destruction of Kestic Station and for the death of his parents. And so, after no more than a year of fighting for the rebellion, he left the Alliance and headed for deep space and a life as a free trader. It was not long until Zev learned the shocking truth about what happened. A friend he had confided in concerning Kestic's rebel involvement was the informant who revealed the station's ties to the Empire. He had trusted this friend, and the leak in security of the supply line was Zev's fault. This realization gave him a newfound attitude toward the rebellion, and he came to accept his own responsibility. It was not long after this that Zev rejoined the Alliance to fight the true enemy, the Empire. A human male Corellian, Wedge Antilles was born in 21 BBY, the son of Jagged Antilles and his wife Xena, who owned a fueling depot in the Gus Trenta Inner System Market Station over the planet Corellia. He had a sister, Sayal, who was 10 years older. She left Corellia while Antilles was only 7 and lived estranged from her family. The Antilles never had any word of her and spoke very little about her, but Wedge Antilles remained fond of the sister he never really knew. He lived untouched by the Galactic Empire and the dissent rising against it. Simpler concerns occupied his mind, such as his dream of living in Coronet City, the glittering capital of Corellia. He had maps of the city projected onto the walls of his bedroom, and he longed to contribute to those maps himself by becoming an architect and building great structures. At the same time, he was fascinated by space and daydreamed of naval adventures. Wedge split his time between a farm school located in Corellia's northern hemisphere and his parents' fueling depot on the Gus Trenta station. At farm school, he received training in rural tasks along with his education. He learned to ride backs and slope wings, and from them herded nerfs and nagas. The other half of the year, Antilles traded pastoral pursuits for immersion in the world of space-going technology. Even as a child, he flew tugs and shuttles in busy Corellian space. He worked as a mechanic as well and developed a great proficiency in repair as well as piloting. His family was friendly with Booster Tarek, a noted Corellian smuggler. Tarek's daughter, Mirax Tarek, was about Wedge's age, and she frequently stayed with the Antilles family when her father was on dangerous smuggling missions. She and Wedge were close friends throughout their youth, calling each other by their respective childhood nicknames, Myra and Veggies. Wedge often put his talents to work assisting the smuggler in the upkeep of his ship, the Pulsar Skate, and sometimes even accompanied the Tareks on smuggling trips. In return, Wedge learned many of Tarek's underworld tricks. Just before his 18th birthday, a time when Wedge was in his last days of upper division school, the Bone Star Pirates ship Buzzer under Loka Hask docked with the fueling station. Wedge was aboard Booster's Tarek's Pulsar Skate just off Gus Treta when the Corellian security force arrived. The Buzzer fled the station without unhooking its fuel line, starting a fire that threatened to destroy the station. Tarek established communications with Wedge's parents, and Wedge listened in horror as Jagged and Xena decided to sacrifice themselves in order to reach the lancing charge that would separate the fueling module from the station, keeping the rest of Gus Treta from destruction. Wedge could do nothing but watch the destruction of the module and listen to his parents tell him goodbye. As Wedge grieved, Tarek's information sources revealed that the pirates had destroyed the station on purpose to cover their escape. Wedge asked Tarek for Hask's name, the location of the ship, and the use of a Z-95 Headhunter fighter. The two were able to track the Buzzer to the Juma system, though Tarek, aboard the Pulsar Skate, urged Wedge to merely disable them and let the authorities deal with them, Wedge fired on the pirates from the headhunter, destroying the ship and avenging his parents. The act immediately changed his outlook on life, forcing him to a hardened maturity. Electing to live the life of a simple trader, Wedge struggled economically and had a hard time finding work, despite Tarek's aid in finding contacts. He was unwilling to smuggle but unable to compete in a market where only smuggling paid enough to keep a small freighter in business. In his difficulties, he caught the eye of Cardass Syndicate Lieutenant Talon Card, who once approached him with an offer to transport a cargo for him. Having heard no negative gossip about Card, and therefore believing the man to be too unknown to quantify, Wedge declined. Wedge was orphaned but wealthy, left with the insurance payout on his parents and their depot, as well as the bounty for killing the pirates. Though he had some surviving relatives, he did not stay with them. With guidance from Tarek, he used the credits to buy a tiny Corellian-made freighter, which he modified heavily and put to use as a legitimate pilot. In 2 BBY, Wedge was operating from the Corellian moon Gustelon. There, he enjoyed the hospitality and services of Rallo, an older man and mechanic who ran a garage, and fell in love with Rallo's daughter, Mala Tenero. Though Rallo was active in the alliance to restore the Republic, Wedge was uninterested in revolt against the Galactic Empire. Though he casually disliked the Empire and admired the rebellion, he did not desire to get involved himself and did not find living under the Empire so objectionable. When Tenero asked Wedge once more to join the rebellion and announce her own plans to join her father in resistance activity, Wedge grudgingly said he would consider, but put off further talk until he completed a delivery of machine parts, his first contract in weeks. He would not get the chance to conclude the conversation as he returned to find Gustelon's space in lockdown. Rallo's workshop had been raided and he and his workers had killed the Imperial stormtroopers who threatened Tenero. In retaliation, the Empire had leveled the settlement. A pair of Imperial TIE Ellen starfighters engaged Wedge as he attempted to land. Outraged at the loss of Tenero, he instinctively unleashed his anger against the fighters, shooting them down. As more TIEs arrived, Wedge was forced to flee. Determined to find Tenero, Wedge spent 9 days waiting for the Imperial vigil over Gustelon to end and hearing stories that the Empire had bombed the town and taken all survivors prisoner. Once Imperial forces withdrew, Wedge landed and investigated the town. Although Tenero had been killed, he was never able to determine her fate. Tenero's statement that he had been lucky when he got the contract wore on him, as he thought it tragic that he had not been there with Tenero. In the future, despite frequent accolades to his luck, Wedge never felt comfortable with the label lucky, although he kept his private tragedy to himself and maintained that he had joined the rebellion due to his inability to make a life as a legitimate freighter pilot. Fired to battle the Empire, Wedge decided to join the nascent Rebel Alliance. With his experience as a freighter pilot and mechanic, he served as a gun runner and proved an asset to the Alliance. His Alliance contacts hinted his skills could be even more valuable in the cockpit of a combat ship. When the Alliance Starfighter Corps put out an open call for pilots, Wedge enthusiastically joined the branch where he could strike directly against the Empire, as the Alliance was increasingly doing. His first notable assignment was among the Tirfon Yellow Aces. While on patrol, Wedge happened across a secret Imperial research facility where prototype TIE models were tested. He reported his discovery to Alliance Command, and a lone Y-Wing was sent to obliterate a shipment of prototypes as they were being uploaded in a major coup for the young rebellion. Around 1 BBY, Wedge flew in a Y-Wing squadron when he participated in both an orbital and ground assault on Imperial cloning facilities on the planet Camino, led by the Rebel General and Jedi Master Ram Kota, together with Commodore Yat D. Vidas. The planet's shield proved stronger than expected, and the attack force suffered heavy losses attempting to breach it. After his squadron was torn apart by a concentrated blast of turbo laser fire, Wedge called for a retreat to be ordered. However, Kota commanded Wedge to hold his position and for all ships to keep pressing the attack. Starkiller, a clone of Force-sensitive rebel leader Galen Merrick, whom Kota was mentoring, piloted the Salvation into the planet's shield generator. Wedge piloted his Y-Wing to the planet's surface, covering the ground assault on the cloning facility. Starkiller leaped onto Wedge's fighter during the operation, asking the pilot to carry him to the cloning towers where the Sith Lord Darth Vader, Starkiller's former master, was holding Rebel Captain Juno Eclipse. Heavy fire kept Wedge from reaching it through the dogfight, so at Starkiller's urging, he dove underneath the platform on which the facility was built, then shot his way through the platform near the spires. He emerged near the target and Starkiller jumped into the building. There, Starkiller rescued Eclipse and managed to capture Vader, though Vader did not remain in Rebel custody for long. Aboard Mon Calamari Admiral Gyal Akbar's cruiser, the Independence, Wedge served with the Red Squadron in 1 BBY. In the Battle of Turkana, he notched 3 Imperial kills before he was forced to eject from his T-65 X-Wing starfighter. Wedge was made a lieutenant in Red Squadron and was listed among the squadron's key personnel as an active threat to the Empire in an edition of the Imperial Handbook, A Commander's Guide, published shortly before the Battle of Yavin. Lieutenant Wedge flew as Red 2 under Unit Commander Darvin Drees, Red Leader. Among the pilots in the unit whom Wedge befriended were Jack Porkins, Ceci Doc Iris, nicknamed for her political science doctorate, and Jal T. Nave. He quickly began flying in raids on Imperial convoys. Although considered a show-off, Wedge was a standout pilot and emergent leader in the squadron, and so was quickly put in a position of responsibility. He trained some junior pilots such as Bren Quercy, was responsible for assigning starfighters to the unit's pilots, and was given command of some missions on which Drace was not present. In 0 BBY, Red Squadron, stationed at the secret rebel base in the Great Temple on Yavin 4, a moon of the planet Yavin Prime, was joined by a squad of defectors from the Imperial ship Rand Ecliptic, led by Biggs Darklighter and Derek Hobby Clivian. Wedge's first mission with Darklighter was a convoy raid in which Darklighter acquitted himself extremely well. Wedge greatly admired the defector's skill in the cockpit and quickly became good friends with him. Wedge, Darklighter, and Porkins all came to room together on Yavin 4 and shared a strong camaraderie. Thank you for joining me for this episode. If you enjoyed the stories, please give a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes of Star Wars Stories Extended. I appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more adventures with you soon.